Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would talk about this video in this subject that I found to be very particularly interesting. And this is going to be a video, I believe, by that of ESPN. Whatever the full channel name is, I'm not sure. But in this video, of course, as a result of the UFC 300 card, probably the most exciting potential fight, at least out of all the fights that was going to be within that of the five main events, of course, was going to be that debatably of Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje. Unfortunately, in my view, the fight really did not end up living up to the hype. Now, of course, Max Holloway put on a great performance, and of course, he ended up having a great knockout. But in my view, Justin Gaethje was very flat in the fight. I thought that he put on a very piss poor performance. I thought that his performance was disappointing. And, I don't think that I would have been shocked had Max Holloway won. I think that I was favoring Justin Gaethje about 60-40 to 70-30 in the fight just because of the amount of power and on top of that, the offense. And I've never really been, a guy that thought that Max Holloway would fare as well at the 155-pound weight class as some others. Personally, I think that Max Holloway is a guy that if you put him there, even at his best, I do believe that he loses to the best version of Dustin Poirier just like he did those few years back. I think that, of course, he would lose to Khabib Nurmagomedov. I think that more than likely he would lose to the best version of Conor McGregor. I think that more than likely he would lose to the best version of a couple of other fighters, at least debatably. But, of course, Max Holloway, is definitely an all-time great fighter. There's no doubt about that. He did his business at the featherweight class. And, of course, this is now his greatest lightweight win of all time, even though he's only really had two fights there. But Max Holloway, of course, deserves a great amount of credit. But the question is that Max Holloway, especially after this, what does he plan to do next? And why was he able to put on such a dominant performance over Justin Gaethje? What did he do right in the fight? And more importantly, also, what did Justin Gaethje do wrong in this fight? Because, in my personal view, Max Holloway, I thought that he looked very good in the fight. But to be honest with you, this wasn't the best version of Max Holloway that I had ever personally seen. I thought that Max Holloway, of course, was doing a good enough job, but the best performance that I had probably ever seen Max Holloway in a fight was against that of Brian Ortega. That probably was the most flawless performance in that of Max Holloway's career. Now, Max Holloway, he didn't really, piece up Justin Gaethje like that, and you don't always have to piece up someone like that for it to be a great performance. Max Holloway basically won every single round besides maybe round four, and when it comes down to it, Max Holloway was just very thoroughly impressive throughout the whole entire bout. But once again, I thought that Justin Gaethje looked very flat throughout the fight. I don't think that he had any of the same type of attacks as what he usually does, at least nowhere near as consistently. Now the question is, why is that? Is Justin Gaethje, maybe did he feel Max's power a bit early on and, he was a bit timid? Maybe he was a bit more powerful than what he thought. I mean, I doubt it because Justin Gaethje is a person that he's been in the ring with maximum punchers, such as overall Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler and other guys like that. He's been in there with some very, very, very big punchers. So I pretty much overall would cross that off of my calculations. Could it be the movement of Max Holloway and the using of his feet and moving in and outside of the range? It very well could be. It looked like Justin Gaethje was a little bit uncomfortable with Max Holloway's movement. But to be quite honest with you, Justin Gaethje just looked like he had no idea how to get in on Max Holloway whatsoever. Even when Max Holloway was not really throwing a whole lot, Justin Gaethje was just very stagnant. He was very flat. He was a guy that, in my view, he pretty much looked like a done version of himself. And I'm not stating this overall once again to not give Max Holloway credit. All-time great fighter. But Justin Gaethje, in my personal view, he looked like a done fighter in that fight yesterday. He had almost no game plan whatsoever. I mean, I don't know what he expected to do against Max Holloway. I don't know if he just expected Max Holloway to just run into his shots, and that's a very big possibility. Justin Gaethje's been a little bit more on the defensive side as of late, especially ever since he was able to get that win over Tony Ferguson. That style's been able to work for him, where opponents come forward at him, and of course, he's been able to pretty much be very reactionary with his power shots. I think maybe he thought that Max Holloway was going to be a little bit more offensive than what he was, and then he could take advantage, of Max Holloway, possibly getting inside the range, but that didn't end up happening. So what necessarily was the problem with Justin Gaethje in this fight? Was it just that Max Holloway, that his style freaked him out? Could it be that he's a little bit too long in the tooth, meaning overall that he's been through a little bit too many wars? I'm not really quite sure. Maybe a mix of both. But either way, Max Holloway deserves a great amount of credit. And of course, that Ilia Topuria fight, which is potentially now on the table, that's going to be a great fight. I would love to see that fight. And Max Holloway apparently wants that fight next. Of course, he would want that fight next. Why not? Of course, I would like to see Volkanovski get a rematch with that of Ilia Topuria. But, of course, Volkanovski, to be quite honest with you, even though once upon a time he was a great champion and one of the top fighters in the world, some people would even debate at one time the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world in the UFC, he looks a little bit long in the tooth himself. He's not a young guy anymore, I believe. I believe he's about 35 to 36 years old. If I'm wrong about that, someone correct me. Maybe he's younger. I don't know. But either way, he's just recently gotten stopped in his last 2 fights. And I think that had he only gotten stopped overall against that of Islam Makhachev, of course, that would have been different. But Ilia Topuria, in a fight that, in my view, Alexander Volkanovski was winning. He was also winning the second round. But Ilia Topuria, when he hit Volkanovski's chin, I'm not saying that shot was not a hard shot, but in my personal view, Volkanovski's chin did not look quite the same in that fight to me. Just in my personal view. And that's not me stating, once again, like when I state these things, that's not me stating that nor Holloway nor Ilia Topuria deserve A-grade credit, because they beat those fighters when they were A-grade level fighters. But in my personal view, Justin Gaethje in this fight, he looked completely flat. He looked like he had no plan whatsoever. He almost looked nervous pretty much overall at the beginning of the bell. But it is what it is. But anyways, Max Holloway is going to talk about his victory. Let's get straight into it.
Yeah, I'm here with Max Holloway and the BMF belt. Max, man, I told you when you got up here, you were just the coolest dude on the planet, man. A beautiful performance and just an absolutely savage finish. It's been, I don't know, maybe about an hour. How is it in? How is it? How is it taking it all in?
It feels good. It feels good. The BMF, I know it's the baddest mother effer, but I want to change it so I can say it on top of ESPN. Blessed man forever. That's what it should stand for. So, I'm just blessed. I was blessed with the opportunity. Shout out to Justin Gaethje, the highlight, brother. Without him, this is not possible. He had everything to lose.
If Max Holloway would have returned to the 155-pound weight class, I would love to see him fight either Charles Oliveira, but he looks like he may be a little bit behind it as well, at least in terms of his winning streak. I would also love to see him fight that one Armenian fighter, Sarukian, Islam Makhachev, and Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier, of course, they could potentially have that trilogy match, but Dustin Poirier in his last fight, of course, he was able to beat that very talented, Paris fighter, or that French fighter. But, Dustin Poirier, to be honest with you, in that last fight, he looks like he's a little bit long in the tooth as well. He looks like overall that he was a bit old. He definitely was old in that fight, because he couldn't handle the grappling very well against that of Benoit Desailly, I believe that was his name. He really overall looked slower. He looked like he had lost a step. And I believe Dustin's about 35 years old. So, I wouldn't be surprised. But it would still be a very interesting fight. But Dustin Poirier, I believe that his next fight is going to be a title fight over Islam Makhachev. And I think Dustin Poirier, he's already stated multiple times that, it pretty much could be the end of his career, whatever happens next, after his next loss. So I believe that Dustin Poirier, that he probably discussed it with Dana behind the scenes that, hey, if I get this French dude, I'm going to have one more title shot, try to put on a fight of a lifetime. And, after that, I'll just ride off into the sunset, depending on what happens, But yeah, I don't know. Fight that I would love to see is Max Holloway versus Sarukian, or Max Holloway versus, maybe Charles Oliveira, something like that. Michael Chandler, who in my view is the most overrated 155-pounder, one of the more overrated fighters on the roster. He's a guy that brings fireworks, but he's very technically flawed.
He put it out there, and everybody was saying that I was up on the scoreboards, but if it was flipped and he was up on the scoreboards, I know he'd give me that chance of 10 seconds, so there it is. And some of his...
Great amount of respect overall to Max Holloway, I guess, if you want to put it in that light overall, for putting it on the line in that sense. Personally, I'm not a person that would advise fighters to do that. I'm always a person that would advise to win by any means necessary. But of course, that's why a lot of fans like Max Holloway. He's a guy that's willing to take on any fight at any time. He's a very entertaining fighter. He's very highly skilled, and he deserves a great amount of respect. And of course, he's one of the greater fighters of all time. But I will state this. You can tell that the way that a lot of people are advertising this knockout and advertising overall Max Holloway, that for whatever reason, Dana White really likes that of Max Holloway. He really has to hype up this dude, because this dude has a humongous fan base. And the Max Holloway fan base, this has turned the Max Holloway fan base into pretty much the most delusional, UFC fan base in current, modern modern history. It just is what it is. Because if you ask the Max Holloway fan base about that Dustin Poirier fight, in the rematch, they'll tell you overall that, oh, Max, that was a fight that could have went either way. The first 2 rounds were Dustin, but the last 3 could have went to Max. All that's bullshit, and then they'll tell you about, oh, Max Holloway, he really should have won that first and second Alexander Volkanovski fight. Now, the second fight, you could debate that he, possibly could have won against Volkanovski. But the first one, no. To be honest with you, I scored that about 4 rounds to 1, 5 rounds to 0 for Volkanovski. I remember that fight. And the third one, he definitely didn't win. So, love Max Holloway, great fighter. But his fan base, they're a lot like the Kobe Bryant fan base. That's who Max Holloway kind of is. He's a lot like Kobe Bryant, one of the all-time greats. But when it comes to his fan base is so highly emotional and delusional. Like, they'll actually try to tell you certain things that really didn't happen.
This guy punched so hard, somebody's missed shots.
And once again, a big part of that is because Dana White has been really trying to hype this guy up, and he sees once again the amount of fan base that Max Holloway has, and he deserves it, of course, because he's a great fighter and a very great watch. But once again, a lot of these guys are hyping this up as the greatest knockout of all time and all sort of stuff. And don't get me wrong, it definitely was a great knockout. But once again, you can tell that the way that people are talking about Max Holloway, Dana White, has been hyping this dude up for a very, very long time. That's why Max Holloway, he got 3 opportunities against Volkanovski. Not a lot of other fighters will get 3 opportunities in a very short time against a certain fighter. All right? You know why? Once again, because he knows that Max Holloway is a little bit of where his bread is buttered.
The wind was hitting me. I was like, brother, what is he made out of? He's a titan.
Well, I was going to ask you, man, and you have done this before, actually, with Ricardo Lamas. But yes, what makes you point at the ground 10 seconds left of a fight that you are clearly winning? What makes you do that?
You're not going to not fight Justin Gaethje for the BMF title and not finish a BMF way. My corner was telling me 1 minute, and then there was like 50 seconds.
On top of that, but Max Holloway also has one of the better chins for a UFC champion that I've also ever personally seen. And I'm not sure if that's a part of it. But, Max Holloway, I don't know if he actually fears being knocked out from a certain amount of these guys. Max has an excellent chin. Like, I remember him in the third Volkanovski fight, and I also remember him in the Dustin Poirier rematch. Like, Dustin Poirier was teeing off on that dude in the first couple of rounds. And even, in some of the latter rounds where he split open his forehead. And that dude, and Dustin Poirier, like, that dude is a massive puncher. Like, that dude is a great boxer for a UFC fighter. And then on top of that, that dude can literally punch like a truck. And Max Holloway, that was probably the closest that I had ever seen to him being knocked out. But other than that, Max Holloway has always shown a great chin.
40 seconds. I was like, my gosh, it's come to 10 seconds already. I just want to throw, and 10 seconds came. I invite him to the middle of the cage. He gladly accepted like I know he would, and we just swing for the fences, brother.
So that is not something that you think about beforehand. That is.
And Justin Gaethje, in my view, fought the completely wrong fight. When it comes to Max Holloway is a guy to where you can get your certain advantages over him in terms of the striking. Dustin Poirier has been able to show that. Alexander Volkanovski has been able to show that if overall you are smart enough. But Justin Gaethje is not as technical of a striker as what either of those guys are. He's just not. He's a guy that has a little bit of technical ability, especially if the opponent is doing what he wants them to do. But Justin Gaethje is a guy that in order to beat someone like a Max Holloway or a Dustin Poirier, he has to really try to brawl with them. He has to really try to hurt them. And when he was pretty much standing back and not going after a certain amount of leg kicks, and it appeared overall that he was almost afraid to throw, you're not going to beat Max Holloway like that, because Max Holloway is the better all-around fighter than that of Justin Gaethje. It is what it is.
In the moment, you're like, I want to throw down here in front of all these people.
I want it. No. I want it. If the opportunity came to itself, like if we was going to 5 rounds and 10 seconds of death, we're going to throw down, brother. We're going to do the point. That they did that moment in the game, brother. So it's only right to do it. UFC 300, the biggest event for many years, centuries to come, I'm sure of. Have that type of fight. Like I said, you interviewed me before the fight, guys, and I said, ask me how I feel after, and we got options, man. It's good to be in this position.
Well, I thought for a second.
Look at that. Justin Gaethje had 103 strikes. I'm not even sure if he really landed that many significant strikes, to be honest with you. 199. Now, Max Holloway is always known as a guy that has a great amount of volume, but so is Justin Gaethje. Now, could it just be that he met someone that, once again, has more volume than him? Yes. But he was not a guy overall, once again. Gaethje was not supposed to overall throw less than Max Holloway in this fight. He was supposed to kill the legs very early on. and then he was going to try to have to pressure him up against the cage. I don't know why he fought a completely defensive fight against Max Holloway. And once again, to be honest with you, Justin Gaethje looked completely out of it in this fight. Like, he didn't look anywhere near what I'm used to seeing with him. But once again, it could have just been Max Holloway's movement.
Maybe that you had decided that I'll throw down for the final 10 seconds. The second that Dana White said there was $300,000 bonuses, you were pretty excited.
Brother, 300. If that's not fight of the night and performance of the night, I don't know what is, brother. Dana, Hunter, get you guys checkbook out. Give a lot of people 600Ks on here. Come on.
Well, you're seeing the stats there. You outlanded him 181 strikes to about 100 for Justin Gaethje. Just the performance in itself. What were you thinking coming into this fight? What were you thinking were going to be the keys? And how internally were you sort of processing this fight? How was it playing out to your expectations?
I just had to be perfect. I had to be perfect, man. That was the main thing. Be perfect. Don't be lazy.
Well, he definitely didn't have to be perfect in this fight because Justin Gaethje was terrible. Justin Gaethje was absolutely awful within this fight. There was almost nothing that he did that was good within this fight. Maybe he won round 4, maybe, but everything else, I mean, Justin Gaethje was absolutely, it was a catastrophe in terms of overall his performance. And once again, overall, I don't really have a horse in the race. I'm glad that Max Holloway won because, of course, he shut a lot of people up. He also proved me wrong as well because I predicted, that of Justin Gaethje, I believe, to win either by decision or latter round stoppage. But Gaethje, like a lot of people are calling this, fight of the year. Well, it wouldn't really be fight of the year because for it to be fight of the year, the other person actually has to put up a fight. Justin Gaethje put up no fight whatsoever. I mean, it was really pathetic.
Because at the end of the day, this guy, when you get lazy on him, he lands something and then you're...
But definitely, could be performance of the night if you want to state that.
You're on your butt. He did put me on my butt. There's a little bit of mix-up. Like, we got tangled and he hit me, but he did land something, and I was on my butt. So I don't know if they officially count that as a knockdown, but if he did, good on him because he said he was going to do it, So, man, damn, Justin, why you got to do me like that, brother?
The spinning back kick was a big weapon for you.
Oh, for sure, for
Is
sure.
that something you just felt in there, or is that something...
He said, damn, Justin, why you got to do me like that, bro? I'm sure that Justin Gaethje isn't... I'm sure overall that no one is going to remember that knockdown, Max. What they're going to remember is you whooping Justin's ass.
That you did.
And that knockout that had Justin Gaethje overall flat on his face.
Nah, he like when he throws, he stays there, puts his head down and he wants to kill you, and I just know that.
And yes, definitely, he definitely was way too repetitive. And Justin Gaethje is a guy to where he has to really get his legs involved because he doesn't really have the type of head movement nor technical ability overall to really outstrike an elite striker like that of a Max Holloway. Now, someone like an Alexander Volkanovski or that, of a, what's his name, Dustin Poirier, or that of a peak Conor McGregor, they probably have that ability, they have that type of ability. But Justin Gaethje is a guy to where, he has to get his legs involved overall for him to be somewhat successful. That's why I was surprised that there was just very few leg kicks from that of Justin Gaethje overall throughout this fight, at least nowhere near. Max Holloway, I believe, landed more leg kicks than what Justin Gaethje did. And I've never seen that from Justin Gaethje in a fight, never.
That if I could time it, I was gonna throw it at the end of the round. I was like, bro, he's pushing. I might as well throw it, and I was blessed enough to land that shot. I think it broke his nose. Yep. Fighting 20 minutes with a broken nose is a tough thing to do.
Well, I'll tell you what, one of the reasons I love this show is because we get some breaking news here and there. We got some breaking news for you, Max Holloway. $600,000.
Let's go, 600K, babe. We got it. I'm building a new house, so that's going to help a lot.
Well, I was going to say, I would like to know what you're going to spend that on, but we got to bring your wife up to find that.
Yeah, no, you got to ask her, because she's the boss, she's everything. I'm sure we're going on a Japan trip. I rushed in.
Of course she's the boss. Overall, just like pretty much all women are in that of westernized society. They're pretty much the boss over their men. And that's how a lot of these bullshit liberal movements overall like it. That's why they always try to push that bullshit overall, trying to have women intimidate men in this feminist movement. Anyway.
Wasn't able to make it. I promise we go to Japan. We go do a wave food there. So if you're in Japan, all my Japan fans, you guys see me, don't be scared to say hi. This is just in the cage, Max. Outside the cage, Max is I'm a very loving guy, I promise.
One of the things that...
I'll give Max credit once again. He appears to be a very great guy. Definitely no doubt about it. Appears to be a decent family man. Appears to be a very decent guy. Now, I don't know anything about him once again outside the ring, really. Because I don't know the man personally, but he appears to be a very great guy.
I think people say about you is that you are like their favorite fighter's favorite fighter. Like all the fighters just love you. You are pure entertainment all the time. I want to show you the reactions that were happening front row at Octagon side from a bunch of UFC fighters. UFC posted this on Twitter. Have you seen this yet?
No.
I'll tell you what, Israel Adesanya was not happy when Alex Pieta ended up getting that knockout. That dude hates Alex Pieta so goddamn bad.
Okay, so you see Izzy, see Ilia.
Yeah. Tave, God of War, my man.
All three of those fighters that they just showed are going to be in a very particularly interesting situation. Israel Adesanya, of course, is going to have to go through Du Plessis, I believe, that one South African fighter. I would more than likely predict Israel Adesanya to win that fight, but I guess, you never know. I just think that Du Plessis, I think that he's a little bit too flawed to beat the best version of Israel Adesanya, but we'll see. Because Israel, of course, ended up losing pretty badly to Sean Strickland, so we'll see what happens. Ilia Topuria, of course, he could potentially have a super fight with Max Holloway. Topuria, I believe, is one of the most talented fighters in the world right now. Certainly one of the most talented boxers. And when it comes to Max Holloway, of course, with Ilia. And then, of course, with Tom Aspinall, who could have a super fight without a John Jones. And let me tell you what, John Jones better be careful of that dude. That Brit is nothing to fuck around with. That dude can punch. That dude, from what I remember, can grapple. That dude can do everything. Excellent, excellent fighter.
Don't play the game, Izzy, my man. That's awesome. I saw Alex's one.
What was Alex's?
Alex Volkanovski.
Yeah.
I saw him. He did one. Unless somebody put another reaction to mine, but I think he did one. So that was pretty cool.
I haven't seen that one yet. I'll have to look for it. But one thing I got to ask, and he's not here to defend himself, so I'm not going to, speculate on anything. But the internet, a lot of the internet felt that Ilia looked a little uncomfortable watching that.
I mean,
of course, because Ilia Topuria, once again, is a guy that's a threat to Max Holloway, and Max Holloway has a very delusional fan base. Ilia Topuria ain't threatened by Max Holloway. It is what it is. Now, that's not me stating once again that Max Holloway could not beat that of Ilia Topuria. Of course he could. But Ilia Topuria is his own champion. He just beat the guy overall that whooped Max Holloway's ass 3 times. So please.
it is what it is, bro. I don't know. Like, how are we supposed to react? You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, it is what it is. Like I said, man, he's an El Matador. He's trying to escape a boot from the pen. You know what I mean?
This is him as you are calling him out right there.
Yeah. He's a fighter, but he's just chilling, bro. Who knows? Like, I can't say nothing. We don't know how he is as a person,
Sure.
Like, I'm lively, I'm loud, I like to laugh or whatever, so.
And you notice once again that ESPN is trying to frame it as if Ilia Topuria as he's scared shitless of Max Holloway. Once again, ESPN has been hyping up this dude, Max Holloway, for such a long time. Like, any time that this dude can potentially get a title shot, any time that this dude can potentially overall get, a higher ranking, like, they always take the opportunity. And don't get it wrong, don't get it twisted. Max Holloway is a great fighter. But once again, this has led the Max Holloway fan base to be the current most delusional fan base in all of MMA. Once again, they'll tell you shit overall like, Max Holloway really won that Dustin Poirier rematch. Max Holloway really should have won 2 out of the 3 Volkanovski fights. Like, stupid shit like that. Max Holloway is a great fighter. He's even an all-time great fighter. He's one of the greatest fighters to ever walk within that of the octagon. But he's not quite on the level of what a certain amount of the UFC and what his fan base alleges. It is what it is. Is he a great fighter? All-time great fighter? Yes. Is he a top 10 fighter of all time? Absolutely not. Is he a top 20 fighter of all time? Absolutely not. But he is an all-time great fighter.
I ain't that. I ain't putting no mind to that. The guy's a killer. And if our paths cross, which I think it will, first things first.
I can assure you that they will, because Dana White right now is looking at that fight with dollar signs, and he's hoping that you win that fight, Max Holloway. He's hoping that you win that fight.
Said Alex deserved it, brother. He did more than enough work to deserve a direct rematch. But if you want to take a break, who's next? I see a lot of.
But if Alexander Volkanovski does overall take that rematch against that of Ilia Topuria, and I would predict Topuria to win that fight, because Volkanovski I think that he's had a little bit too much wear and tear probably at this point in time, even though, of course, he's a great fighter himself. But we'll see overall what ends up happening with that. But if Alexander Volkanovski, of course, could rematch that of Ilia Topuria, I'd be very interested to see who Max Holloway is going to fight next. Because other than Volkanovski and Ilia Topuria, there's really not going to be any major threats to that of Max Holloway. There's really no major threats there at the 145-pound weight class to any true A-grade elite creme de la creme fighters other than Max Holloway, Volkanovski, and that of Topuria. There's no one else there. Yair Rodriguez, in my view, was always overrated in my view. Brian Ortega is very good, but he's just missing the level that he needs to be a champion over the creme de la creme, And then, I mean, all the other fighters are pretty much null and void. It is what it is. 155 is pretty much where it's at when you talk about the elite of the elite. At least it was a few years ago.
People throwing a lot of names there, but it's like, come on, brother. If we can't go to Spain, which I'm hearing they're having a hard time to get to Spain this year, and he wants to fight this year, there's a perfect place, Ninth Island, a stadium, Allegiant Stadium, 66,000 people. You guys saw here, this is a Hawaii pro crowd. Hawaii flags everywhere. People were singing my walkout song. People were singing the front, the Hawaiian Superman song too. So at the end of the day, man, I just can't wait, man. We got options, like I said. The 155 champ was talking before the fight saying 3 guys have an opportunity to go make a name to be next. He didn't call me as one. I guess he's scratching his head now because at the end of the day, we'll see what happens. Like I said, I told you.
I would love to see Max Holloway versus Sarukian. And then maybe whoever wins that fight could potentially get the next title shot of whoever wins that fight between Poirier and Islam Makhachev, which I guess more than likely is going to be Islam Makhachev. I think that Dustin Poirier, once again, I think that he's a little bit, has a little bit too much wear and tear. I thought that he looked like he lost a step within his last fight. And, I mean, Dustin, even for as extremely gifted of a fighter that he is, Dustin is a guy that, unfortunately, he has the 9 out of 10 syndrome. And what the 9 out of 10 syndrome is that, you almost are perfect in a lot of categories, but there's that one point that you might be missing. Dustin Poirier is a guy to where he almost gets it. He's almost there every single time. He had Khabib Nurmagomedov in a little bit of that guillotine. That guillotine that he tries 76 times to fight but never lands. He gave, Khabib in certain areas maybe a tough fight, even though Khabib mainly ragdolled him. Of course, he gave Charles Oliveira a very tough fight. Could have went either way, but of course, Charles Oliveira was able to beat him. Dustin Poirier is just one of those guys. He's one of the guys that, of course, was one of the greatest fighters of all time, in my personal view, but he was just never able to get a hold of that belt. Same like Dan Henderson, same like a couple of other fighters. One of the greatest fighters ever, but just not able to get a hold of that belt. Alistair Overeem, certain fighters like that.
Before, he's known for defending against 45ers, so, I like my options.
Well, actually, I think right before the show started, so forgive me if I'm not getting this exactly correct, but I believe he tweeted, "See you soon, boy," and people are taking that to believe that he's referring to you.
Before my fight started or after?
After the fight.
Oh. He might have a change of heart. Good for him. Good for him. But we all know he don't work his own Twitter. So we see what happens.
I mean, me personally, I think you have to capitalize on this moment. I mean, this fight game is about striking while the iron is hot. You just did that at UFC 300, which, by the way, I know you're not a big boastful guy. Is that the greatest knockout in UFC history?
Brother.
Here we go. Here we go. But overall, to talk about the greatest knockout in UFC history, it's definitely up there. When you talk about the greatest knockouts in UFC history, I'm not really quite sure, but it's definitely up there because not only in terms of the excitement, but also in terms of but in terms of the magnitude. Gaethje, of course, wasn't really a legitimate champion, I believe. He had the BMF belt, but that's kind of a belt that, in my view, I really don't count. But Justin Gaethje, of course, he was one of the top fighters there. And, of course, no one expected Max Holloway to put him away the way that he did and dominate him the way that he did. So it's certainly up there. I'm not really exactly sure what I would claim to be the greatest knockout of all time. There's really quite a bit of them. I think that Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo, maybe you could also claim that as well, even though maybe, it wasn't as flashy as this one. There's probably some other ones that I'm forgetting. Dustin Poirier actually had a great knockout over Benoit Daniel in his last one. But in terms of one-punch walk-offs, this is definitely up there.
I think that's good, but my top moment, nobody's ever gonna top that one when I got to go to Rio, fight the King of Rio, and do what I did there. This is the second one in my book. I know a lot of people, UFC 300, how big it is. last second, the latest title fight finish, right? So I understand how huge it is, but in my book, I'm gonna hold it dear to that one in Rio.
Yeah. Well,
I remember those two fights. Jose Aldo gave it a very competitive go. But Jose Aldo also was known as a guy that would lose a little bit of steam within the final 3 rounds, and that ended up being exactly what happened. Jose, in my view, especially in the first fight against Max Holloway, Jose was winning those first 2 rounds, but he just he didn't have the stamina overall to compete with that of Max Holloway. Max Holloway, you got to give him a lot of credit. This man is always well conditioned, has excellent stamina, is always willing to throw down. Very entertaining fighter, very highly skilled. Max Holloway definitely is one of the greater fighters in UFC history.
Understand it because of what Jose Aldo meant to the sport and meant to you. But to finish just my thought, I think it's got to be you and Ilia next. You just did that at UFC 300. You strike while the iron is hot. He just knocked out Alex Volkanovski.
I think Dana White is going to want Max Holloway versus Ilia Topuria next. Why would you not possibly want that fight next? But Alexander Volkanovski may potentially get it. I would like to see Max Holloway maybe fight at 155. But, of course, the Ilia Topuria fight, that'd be very particularly interesting. That probably would be the next one on my personal wish list. Because Alexander Volkanovski, he just looks like he has a little bit too much wear and tear.
That is how you make blockbuster fights. I'm not wrong about that, right? We know how this fight game works. It's got to be that fight.
That's a stadium fight, so we see what happens. Like I said, if they can't get Spain, then the ninth island is here. Allegiant Stadium, the Raider Stadium. Brother, I'm a Raider fan now.
Yeah.
I got chains, so I would love to do it there.
Spain versus Hawaii in Allegiant Stadium. That sounds pretty good to me, man.
Huge.
A kid from Waianae, Hawaii, doing what you did at UFC 300.
Certified banger. Read the hat, guys. This is for you guys. This is for Hawaii. This is for the fans. Without you guys, none of this is possible. I got my floor shorts. I got on UFC 300. We got the BMF title, all because of you guys. Thank you, guys.
But anyways, that's pretty much about it. Very good on Max Holloway for the performance that he put on. I thought that Justin Gaethje looked a little bit flat. I don't think that he really did a good job technically at all. I thought that, he did not use his lead hand whatsoever. I thought that his attacks are very repetitive and that he should have definitely tried to attack the legs more. And I think that he should have done what really won in prior fights in the first place. But Justin Gaethje, unfortunately, he of course really didn't do any of that. Or at least, he tried a little bit, but, he wasn't able to do that. Either A, maybe because, he had a little bit of the wrong game plan. Or B, just because of Max Holloway's greatness. Probably a little bit of both. But you know what? Congrats to that of Max Holloway, and we'll see if he possibly takes that Ilia Topuria fight next. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.